Today is a day of a tale of tales that the world know very well. But to them that the story is told about forever remains a tale. But on this joyous day of days, what was lost have now been found. Them who helped to uncover the truth will live in the world renowned. Return of the King, return of the King, make way, make way, make way. Return of the King, return of the King, forever where he may reign. Time waits for no one, 'cause everyone's subject to time. From tales of God to tales of men, therein your answer will lie. Return to the King, return to the King, make way, make way, make way. Return to the King, return to the King, forever where he may reign. Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, it is we, it is us, the children of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers who descended down from time immemorial. I am your king, King Clifford Jefferson, descendant of Godfrey, the fifth count of Van Jew, reincarnated of King Edgar the Peaceful, which we know as our Jesus Christ. I have beside me is my queen, Queen Godwinson from the House of Godwinson, as well as all those who are members of the English Church. We have with us Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont, C.A. DEJURE from the House of Murphy, as well as Brother Burke from the House of Burgess. We have our Secretary, Countess Walker, as well as our astrologist, Sister Militant from the House of Militant, our officers, Brother Scott, as well as all those who are here today trying to get an understanding of who we are as the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers. I'm going to give my attention and you will give your attention and your ear to our illustrious Archbishop Belmont now. So Belmont for his first portion of this beautiful lesson he has prepared for you. And with that, I'll give Countess Godwinson, which is my queen, a couple minutes to say a couple of words. And I digress.
Greetings, everyone. Greetings to the King, Clifford Jefferson. Greetings to Archbishop and everyone here on the panel today in the King's Bench. I know it's been some trying times for everybody, very stressful, but I just want to say don't lose focus. And one thing that we've always been known to do is come to the church whenever we're seeking some sort of remedy or relief. And there's no better place I would rather be right now than in the church. And with that, I digress.
Well said, Queen. Once again, in lieu of what Queen just said, we want to give our respect and our love as well as support to Countess Allen in her time of grief. We wish her well, we wish the family well. And we know that, our ancestors are always with us, where her ancestors and her family members will also be. So let's be with her in her time of grief. And with that, I digress. Archbishop.
Greetings, everyone, from the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion. First, I'd like to give honors to our King as well as Queen Godwin from the House of Godwin and King Clifford Jefferson from the Royal House of Plantagenet. Once again, without them, we cannot be here together as family, kith and kin to commune and bring these gems to the forefront for those of you who have just not had the opportunity to listen to us, as well as those who have been following along on our channel or our path to be able to bring themselves to the proper understanding of who they are as Anglo-Saxon Berbers, descendants of Kingdom of England and Great Britain, which is known as Albion. Like we say, today we're living through some very trying times, which they call, which what we'll call the time of revelation or the apocalypse, because apocalypse means change. And with change, it comes lots of pain, destruction, heartache, sorrow, etc. But after that transition, it becomes, better. Things become easier. You start to see the good. You start understanding why you went through those trials and tribulations. And it's really to get you right and prepared for you to be able to uphold your estate, which is the kingdom of England, i.e., heaven. You have to experience hell to know how to not go back to hell. And right now, we're all living through hell, through which we can call Job or a job. Um, but the most important part of this lesson today that we're going to talk about is about who you are to get through the fire, because we come for our own. And like the scripture said, Yeshua come for his own, and his own received him not. And so many are called, few are chosen. And we always say that he who has no history has no place in time. And if you have no law, you definitely have no history. So with history and law must be in tandem with each other because they are part of a whole. So what we're going to do, which we've always been showing you here at the Third Temple English Church of England, is everything must be concrete, right, and exact. And what we're going to do is today's lesson, we're going to show you from the Supreme Court who says who the Anglo-Saxons are at this day, time, and age. As well, I'm going to present who we know, Thomas William Shore, the origin of the Anglo-Saxons. So at the King's request, we can go ahead and get started, unless you want to say something else.
Yes, well said, Archbishop. All those who will be viewing this once it's posted, I applaud you, for your quest in finding out who you are, from which was given to you. But we are informing you today that it's a must that you take this quest seriously. October 21st marks the day when Godfrey Bullion started the crusade. And the crusade, if each and every one of you who watched the movie Kingdom of Heaven, which is a movie that was shown not too long ago, I think it was cast in 2018, is a good movie to view. And on my partial of the lesson, I would go into that, and it will qualify what the Supreme Court has been saying in regards to identity. We are all trying to find out relative to who we are, and that only comes through your birthright, which is hereditament, comes through hereditament, which is based off your surname. Your surname is all patrilineal. It's called the proximity of blood, and that will be explained to you today. So with that, I digress. Archbishop.
Okay, 1 second. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first we're going to go ahead and share. I think I'm going to go ahead and keep the court case, that part last, for you to kind of build up the anticipation. The reason why I like this book is because the author was born before our time. His time was between 1840 to, if I'm not mistaken, 1907. And his name is Thomas William Shore. So let's go ahead and look up who Thomas William Shore was. And it's kind of crazy because they don't give much information on this brother, especially after you look at his accolades. So it lets you know that they're hiding something. But first, here he goes. Thomas William Shore, as you see, says sometimes given as William Thomas Shore, was an English geologist and antiquarian. He was born April 5th, 1840 in Wantage, United Kingdom, and died January 15th, 1905 in Belem, London, United Kingdom. His nationality was British. All right, so let's go ahead and go into this real quick to see. All right, so as you can see, it's not much information on him besides we're going to talk about his life real quick. It says born on April 5th, 1840 at Wantage. He was son of William Shore, architect by his wife Susanna Carter. Brought up at Wantage, he became, about 1864, organizing secretary to the East Lincolnshire Union of Institutions at Burnley. In 1867, he was sent with others by the Science and Art Department to the Paris exhibition to report on scientific and technical education, and gave evidence on the subject before a select committee at the House of Commons in 1868. All right. It says in 1873, Shore was appointed secretary of the Hartley Institution. That's the Hartley Institution. at Southampton and curator of the museum, and later became executive officer of the institution. In 1882, he was the secretary of the geological section of the Southampton meeting of the British Association. He was elected Fellow of the Geological Society on April 3rd, 1878. Both as a geologist and an antiquary, he was considered an authority on Hampshire. So as we can see so far, this guy has pretty strong credentials regarding, like I said, who his position is in society. And in this case, we're talking about the United Kingdom. All right, so it says in 1896, Shore moved to London and founded the Balham Antiquarian Society. He died suddenly at his residence, 157 Bedford Hill, Balham, on January 15th, 1905, and was buried at the cemetery of St. Mary Extra, Woolston, in Southampton. All right, and then I'm going to just take a quick look at some of his works. It says Shore published The Guide to Southampton Neighborhood, 1882, The Letterpress Description of Vestiges of South Old Hampton, 1891, A History of Hampshire, 1892. It says at his death, he was engaged on Origin of the Anglo-Saxon Race, which was edited posthumously by his sons. So this is saying that his sons were editing his work after he had passed away. So once we go into the book, that just says that some of the information is not going to either A, be always accurate, or some of it could have been taken out, the fact that they edited it. All right. The rest of this information is probably not going to be as important, but let's read it anyway. It says Shore was the founder of the Hampshire Field Club Archaeological Society, remained its honorary secretary until his death. He contributed papers to the society's transactions, including ancient Hampshire forests, the clays of Hampshire and their economic use, the Hampshire valleys and waterways. The Shore Memorial Volume 1908, which was undertaken by the society, contains the contributions to the society and other papers. Shortly before 1901, he became joint honorary secretary of the London and Middlesex Archaeological Society and contributed to its transactions a series of papers on Anglo-Saxon London and Middlesex. Pay attention, because we're always talking about Middlesex, correct?
Yes.
So let's go ahead and go on out and take a look at his book, The Origin of the Anglo-Saxons. Now, I brought up two different links. The first link is coming from archive.org because we can see the original book itself, content. So folks can say or can't say that, oh, we're getting this straight from Wikipedia and it's been edited. No, this is coming straight from the book itself. All right, so this is page 103. And it's called Our Darker Forefathers. All right, so this is where it's going to give you a description regarding Anglo-Saxons, who they are, from an antiquarian standpoint, archaeological standpoint, it's in this case a historian standpoint. All right, so it says chapter 7, Our Darker Forefathers. One of the facts concerning the color of the hair and eyes of the people in different counties of England, at the present time brought to light by scientific observations, there's the science, is that there's a higher percentage of people of a mixed brown type living in Herefordshire, Buckinghamshire, Wiltshire, and Dorset than in most other counties. All right, now we had read this before, but you know it's very imperative that we bring information back around so that way you don't forget. Except those in Cornwall and to the old Celtic borders, the inhabitants of these counties are the darkest. This is usually explained on the supposition that in the process of the Saxon settlement, a British population was allowed to remain in these parts of England, which in the course of centuries became mixed with the inhabitants of Anglo-Saxon descent, and consequently the present population is more marked than those of pure descent by brown, hazel, or black eyes, with brown chestnut, dark brown, or black hair. The counties of Hereford and Buckingham have people as dark as Wales. All investigation goes to show that this brunette outcrop is a reality. Now we know brunette means brown, okay? It says Bedeau found that this area in which there is a larger percentage of brown people in England extends from the River Lea to the Warwickshire Avon. In dealing with the circumstances of the settlement, these ethnological facts must receive consideration. All right, the survival, get to the next page. 1 second. All right, so it says The survival of a British population is a possible explanation, and the one which
I don't think it's showing. Oh, yeah. Okay.
right here, and the one most appears most natural. As there are some difficulties in this conclusion, the question arises: is there any other way in which the origin of these mixed brown people, surrounded by others of a somewhat fairer complexion, can be explained? An alternative explanation is that the people of a darker race may have come with the Angles, Saxons, or Danes, and have settled largely in these parts of the country. There is circumstantial evidence that people of a brown or dark complexion did come into England during the time of both the Saxon and Danish settlements, and this may now be summarized. All right, so let's going to go ahead and skip along because a lot of this, is going to pretty much be speaking for itself. It says over here on page 105, 105, it says, if the British people were left as suggested like an eddy between the main lines of the Anglo-Saxon advance east in these counties, would it not be very surprising that the advancing Saxons would make no use of the existing Roman roads and Walton Street, Eichmann Street, and Aikman Street, which passed through parts of these shires, while the Ermine Street also went through Hertfordshire? All right, just pass some of this because that's not speaking what I want you to see. All right, here we go. All right, page 10.
1 second, Archbishop. Go down to the bottom of this thing. Did it say a seer? Everybody see that? A seer life of Alfred the Great. All right, everybody pay attention to that because I'm going to go into that as well. Continue.
All right, so page 107. All right, it says the consideration of the probable origin of the great proportion of brunettes in two of the South Midland counties of England leads us to that of color names as surnames. Now, remember, the king was just speaking to you about your surname. All right. It says surnames and place names which may probably have been derived from their original settlers. So they were showing you your names were coming based off of who you were and what you were doing. For example, there is the common name Brown. This has been derived from the Anglo-Saxon brun, B-R-U-N, signifying brown. It is not reasonable to doubt that when our forefathers called a man Brun or Brown, they gave him this name as descriptive of his brown complexion. The probability that the brunettes were common is supported by their frequent references to persons named Brun in Anglo-Saxon literature. Brun was a name not confined to England in Anglo-Saxon and later periods. On the contrary, we find that it was a common name in ancient Germany. The typical place name Brunningafield occurs in the charter of Ethelstan, dated AD 938, and local qui Brunningafield de Couture. Brunnensham is mentioned in the charter of Edward the Elder about AD 900. Said Brunsford is another suggestive name. Brunman is mentioned as a personal name in Anglo-Saxon records of the 11th century, and examples of the name Brunning are somewhat numerous in documents of the same period. At the present time, old place names of which the word Braun forms the chief part, such as Braunschweig or Brunswick, are common in Germany. The custom of calling people by color names from their personal appearances or places after them was clearly not peculiar to our own country. It is probable that the name Brunswick was derived from the brown complexion of its original inhabitants.
Good, Archbishop.
Go ahead.
I was born in New Middlesex County in the township of New Brunswick.
And it's tell you Brunswick means the complexion of its original inhabitants, which means they were brown. Pay attention, everyone.
I was born in Middlesex County. He mentioned that. And New City of New Brunswick. He just mentioned that.
Okay. All right, so it says the map published by Ripley based on the official ethnological survey of Germany shows that parts of the country near Brunswick have a higher percentage of brunettes than the districts further north. Bedeau also made observations on the number of Brunswick peasantry and records some remarkable facts relating to the proportion of brunettes among those who came under his observation. In view of this, and the evidence relating to the use of the Anglo-Saxon word brun in English place names, we are not, I think, justified in deciding that all English names which begin with brun modernized into burn, in many cases by the well-known shifting of the R sound, have been derived from brun, a bourne or stream rather than from brawn to brown. Such names from Bruningfield and the Brunningsham point to the opposite conclusion, that brawn in such names refers to people probably so named from their complexions. If a large proportion of the settlers in the counties of Buckingham and Hereford were of a brown complexion, it is clear that they could have been less likely to have been called brawn or brown by their neighbors than brunettes would in other counties, where such a complexion may have been rarer and consequently more likely to have attracted the notice of the people around them. It is not probable that the people who were originally designated by the color names brown, black, gray, or the like gave themselves these names. They most likely received them from others. The evidence concerning brown people in England during the Anglo-Saxon period can be derived from the place name Brun, is supplemented by that supplied in at least some of the old place names beginning with Dun and Dunning. Dun is an Old English word denoting a color a color partaking of brown and black, and where it occurs at the beginning of words is such a combination as Dunningland. It is possible that it refers to the brown people or their children, rather than to the Anglo-Celtic word Dun, a hill or fortified place. Pay attention.
Archbishop. Also, Ing is a patronymic name in England.
Yes.
ING or son is the same thing. It's a name denoting to descent. It's patronymic. So when you see Dun Ing land, it's just descriptive of those people on that land.
Mhm.
Brown descendants on the land.
Exactly.
Well said.
Exactly.
Well said.
So point of venture. So as we see, our words are very important because they actually denote to either a person, place, or a thing.
Good thing.
In this case,
Yes.
it's referencing the original people of those locations and their so-called complexion. All right, so it says, as regards the ancient brown races, or the races of North Europe, there can be no doubt of their existence in the southeast of Norway and in the east of Friesland. All right, so this is going into the different so-called Germanic territories, but we're going to just speak of it real quick for the sake of the convo. There can be no doubt about the important influence which the old Wendish race has had in the northeastern parts of Germany in transmitting to their descendants a more brunette complexion than prevails among the people of Hanover, Holstein, and the Westphalia of more than Teutonic descent. We cannot reasonably doubt that in view of such a survival of brown people as we find at the present time in the provinces of North Holland, Drenthe, and Overijssel, which formed the hinterland of the ancient Frisian country, numerous brunettes must have come into England among the Frisians. It would be an unreasonable to doubt that this is what to think that during the Norwegian immigration into England, all the brown people of Norway were precluded. Okay, and you can read the rest of this on your own. The most important part from this book, as you're seeing, is that the names that we're utilizing. Actually, let me go to this last page, and then we can go ahead and go to the cases. Page 111. All right, so it says the consideration of the evidence that people of brunette complexions were among the Anglo-Saxon settlers in England leads us into that of people of a still darker hue, the dark, black, or brown-black settlers. Probably there must have been some of these among the Anglo-Saxons, for we meet with the personal names Blackman, Blakeman, Blakeman, Blockaman, Blockasunu, Blocka, and Blanchman in various documents of the period. Blocka was an ealdorman of Lindsey who was converted by Paulinus. Blakeman was the son of Ilric or Edric, a descendant of Ida, ancestor of Eldred, king of Bernicia, and so on. The same kind of evidence is met with among the oldest place names Blackmanenburg, which is mentioned in the Anglo-Saxon Charter. Blackmanstone was the name of a place in Dorset, and Blackmanstone that of a place in Kent. Blackashiel and Blackenhill are Domesday names of places in Somerset, and Blackengelly occurs in the Domesday record of Surrey. The name Blackaman occurs in the Hertfordshire Survey and the Blackeen in Lincoln. Among the earliest names of the same kind in the charters, we find Blackenden in Hants and Blackendon in Dorset. The places called Blackmanstone in Dorset and Blackmanstone in Kent were on or quite close to the coast, a circumstance which points to settlers having come to these places by water rather than to a survival of black people of the old Celtic race having been left in them. All right. And so we're going to go ahead and go to the Supreme Court cases, um, which is going to corroborate based off of what William Thomas Shore book just pretty much spoke about regarding who the Anglo-Saxons were. So this is the historical, antiquarian aspect that we just ran over that can be verified. Now we're going to go to the legal aspect. And now once we already said, once you have the two parts of a whole, you have a complete story or you have a complete picture. So this is how we complete our image. Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Hold up some.
Okay, so this is a Supreme Court case, well, a district court case from Michigan, 1942, and it is called Ahmad Hassan, number 162148. And Ahmad Hassan was in propria persona, pretty much dealing with the naturalization case. So let's go ahead and read and see what it's talking about. So far, any questions, any comments before we go along? Okay. So it says, Ahmad Hassan of Detroit, Michigan, and propria persona, naturalization examiner of Detroit, Michigan for the government, and District Judge Tuttle. It says, petitioner is an Arab, being a native of Yemen, located in the southwestern part of the Arabian Peninsula. The petitioner was before the court, and his skin was undisputably dark brown in color. The issue here presented is whether petitioner is a white person within the meaning of the provisions of the Nationality Code enumerating the classes of people who are eligible for citizenship in the United States under United States CA subsection 703(8). Affidavits filed by the petitioner and one other person state that the extremely dark complexion of petitioner's skin is typical of a majority of the Arabians from the region from which he comes, which fact is attributed to the intense heat and the blazing sun of that area. Petitioner claims that, as has been established by ethnologists, the Arabs are remote descendants of, and therefore members of, the Caucasian or white race, and that he is therefore eligible for citizenship. All right. This is
Bishop.
Go ahead, King.
Also, people need to realize that in regards to establishing citizenship, citizenship is not based off just sanguineous, it's based off just soil. And it's based off, as Archbishop said, naturalization. Because in 1790, you had the Naturalization Act. Mm-hmm. Naturalized citizens coming to be citizens, not already citizens here based off being born in our blood. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. Well said, King. All right, so it says the decisions of the Supreme Court in the United States versus back at Singh Thin and Azawa versus United States interpreting the statute in question control the result here. In those cases, the court held that the statute imported a racial rather than an individual test. Pay attention to what's been stated here. The actual color of the skin of the particular individual not being decisive that the phrase white person was generally synonymous with that of a member of the Caucasian race, as popularly understood, and that scientific or ethnological classifications of races were not significant in the application of the act.
Wow.
Y'all understand what's being said?
Do they understand what that is actually saying?
Let me reread this. It says, white person was generally synonymous with that of a member of the Caucasian race as popularly understood, and that scientific or ethnological classification of races were not significant in the application of the act.
Break that down. Define that for Mark Bishop.
So what this is saying that what popular culture at that time considered to be so-called white or Caucasian was what the founding fathers or those acts that they created at that time constituted as being so-called white, not what science considered to be so-called white. Even though you may have all, like they said, scientific proof that says this is who you are, that's not what pop culture at that time was considering so-called white people to be.
Nor ethnology. It had nothing to do with ethnicity as well.
Exactly.
ethnics goes into nationality. Nationality goes in the country. They're not worried about that because this man is an Arab from Yemen. A whole other country and a whole other continent over here trying to claim status as a free white person. Go ahead, Archbishop.
And point of interest, even though he said he was able to put the conclusion of so-called Arabs or Arabians being the descendants of the Caucasians, because we know the Caucasus Mountains, those are still, would it get the term Caucasus Asians, those are still dark-skinned people, historically or ethnologically. But based off of the understanding at this time in court, that ain't what it was. That's not what they saw them as. All right. So we're getting to it. Says in the Thine case, the court pointed out that the framers of the statute in employing the term white persons had primarily in mind European peoples, who constituted the class from which virtually all of the immigration to this country had come and who readily became assimilated into our civilization.
Ooh. That's Bob. Listen to he's not talking about the original habits here. He's just they're qualifying the founding fathers and everybody else who came over here and set up shop.
Exactly.
Based off that classification that has nothing to do with scientific or ethnological or ethnicity links at all. Go ahead.
Yep.
Supreme Court, y'all. This ain't an everyday talk. This ain't on the corner. This ain't on YouTube. This is in the court of law.
This is
Go ahead.
And point of interest, this is the judge speaking this. So, like I said, you ain't got to take it from our point. Listen to what they're saying. All right, so it says, it accordingly held that the petitioner therein, a high caste Hindu who claimed to be of Caucasian race from a scientific classification based upon remote ancestry, was not eligible for citizenship. The court indicated serious doubt as to whether any peoples of Asiatic stock could be considered white persons within the meaning of the statute, but left open for future determination the question of whether some Asiatics might be so closely related to Europeans as to be eligible for citizenship. It appears that the status of an Arabian under the Act has not been definitely settled by the courts. The decision of this court in United States versus Ali is not precisely in point because the defendant Ali in that case at the time he was admitted to citizenship claimed to be a high caste Hindu, but later in the proceedings to cancel his citizenship claimed that although he was a native of India, he was an Arabian of Arabian blood from a remote ancestry. Consideration of the question leads to the conclusion that petitioner is not eligible for citizenship in the United States. The court is of the opinion that when one seeking citizenship is in fact clearly not white of skin, is a strong burden of proof devolves upon him to establish that he is a white person within the meaning of the act. It would appear that petitioner's skin is somewhat darker complexion than that of many Arabs. However, this court does not rest its decision on that ground, but rather upon the ground that Arabs as a class are not white and therefore not eligible for citizenship. In view of the evident intent of Congress as interpreted by the Supreme Court in the Thine case, supra, the court should be presented with a convincing case before it holds a person of Asiatic stock to be white. Apart from the dark skin of the Arabs, it is well known that they are a part of the Mohammedan world and not a wide gulf separates their culture from that of the predominantly Christian peoples of Europe.
Listen, y'all better listen. What he just said, the Mohammedan world. Mm-hmm. This is not racial. This is not bias. This is law. Go ahead, continue.
It cannot be expected that as a class they would readily intermarry with our population and be assimilated into our civilization. The small amount of immigration of these peoples to the United States is in itself evidence of that fact. Arabia, moreover, is not immediately contiguous to Europe or even to the Mediterranean. It is true that most of the Arabian Peninsula, including Yemen, is outside the zone from which Asiatic immigration to this country excluded. And the Supreme Court in the Thine case pointed out that Congress could not have intended that natives from that excluded zone could become American citizens. However, it does not follow that all those outside the excluded zone are white persons under the act. Pay attention, because it's when it gets good. To summarize the approach which must be followed in deciding whether a particular person applying for citizenship is a white person within the meaning of the statute, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, it is necessary to determine first the particular group of racial subdivision to which the individual belongs. In practical effect, proof of this fact is a matter of genealogy. Y'all hear this?
Ooh,
Pay
ooh,
attention.
that's heavy.
Before I move on, it was a book that I posted from my family. It's called the Belmontes, 400 some years. And inside there, they were speaking about if you don't know your genealogy, it's going to be very bad for you. Why? Because they knew that the time of the Inquisition, it was going to return. And only way for the people at the time to be saved from the Inquisition was based off of establishing their genealogy. You have to know where you come from. All right, let me continue. It says the individual who presents an aberration from the color of skin of the group of which he is a member, such as light-skinned Chinese or Japanese or a dark-skinned Anglo-Saxon.
Ooh.
Y'all hear
It
this?
said dark skin. You just look up dark skin by itself, and it just take you right to black. It didn't say light skin. It said dark skin. Dark skin is synonymous of black.
This is dark skin.
It's absent of white. Black is absent of white. So we ain't even talking about the classification of a white person. Y'all better listen.
Hope y'all pay
Court
attention.
case said dark-skinned Anglo-Saxon or light-skinned Chinese, Japanese. Yeah, they might be light-skinned or dark-skinned, but their ethnicity, based on scientific proof, is Chinese or Japanese or Anglo-Saxon. Their color might be dark-skinned, light-skinned, brunette, etc., but their descent is Anglo-Saxon. Go ahead, Archbishop.
So, like says, the dark-skinned Anglo-Saxon does not thereby acquire a different status under the act from other members of his group.
Ooh.
So, as they say, you got to be part of a group. You don't have no status outside your group. You don't have an individual so-called right or position outside your group. You better tie yourself back to your group. And our group, as we see today, is the church. You know, so let me go ahead and get ready to wrap this up because I have one other case to corroborate what it is that we just said. So it says, of course, when an individual applying for citizenship has the skin of a different color than is usual for the members of the group from which he claims to come, a strong burden of proof then rests upon him to show by the usual methods of proving genealogy that he is in fact a member of that group. This is a Supreme Court case, y'all.
Read the next line. Continue to read.
It says, after the individual has been traced into his group, the second question which the court must answer is whether the members of the group as a whole are white persons as Congress understood the term in 1790 when it first enacted the statute.
Wow. Now, mind you, the Naturalization Act was in 1790 for them as white person. Had nothing to do with scientific, conclusive, concrete evidence relative to ethnicity. It had nothing to do with it. So if you can't predate that 1790, then guess what? Everybody else is classified. And he's going to prove that by the next court case. Well done, Archbishop. Continue on with your lesson.
All right, so it says, in deciding this latter question, the test is not how the group in question would be classified. Pay attention. It's not by how the group is classified by ethnologists who've made a study of racial origins, but rather what groups of peoples then living in 1790 with characteristics then existing were intended by Congress to be classified as white persons. Applying these principles.
The characteristics.
What do they mean?
The characteristics.
Like the shape of your nose, the shape of your lips, etc.
Yep.
Nothing deal with your nationality, your ethnicity, your bloodline, nothing. Just the characteristics, the qualifications to fit the characteristics. Go ahead.
Applying these principles, the court finds that the petitioner is an Arab and that Arabs are not white persons within the meaning of the act. It is recognized that a United States versus Cartosian DC decided subsequent to the Thine case, the district court held an Armenian from Asia Minor eligible to citizenship as a white person. The court there found, however, that the Armenians are a Christian people living in an area close to the European border who have intermingled and intermarried with Europeans over a period of centuries. Evidence was also presented in that case of an unconsiderable amount of intermarriage of Armenian immigrants to the United States with other racial strains in our population. These facts serve to distinguish the case of the Armenians from that of the Arabians. This court expresses no opinion as to eligibility of Armenians for citizenship. The petition is denied. So
Y'all better listen.
this
It's
case
gonna
right
get
here
better. It's about to get even better.
about to get good because this was the tone for this one was set from the one I'm about to be able to read next. And we just read what they told you that according to 1790, they weren't going according to the understanding of ethnological view of who we were. It was based off of the characteristics. Characteristics mean what? Yeah, attributes, how you presenting yourself, your clothes, how you speak, all
Legal
of these
standing.
things. Your standing. So if I'm looking like, the homies from the hood and I'm telling them I'm an Anglo-Saxon, by characteristic wise, that don't fit the script, because we already shown that we had many people who are dark skinned who came into many of the different nations and kingdoms who were nothing more than just, foreigners. Yeah, you may look like me in so-called ethnological wise skin tone, but characteristic wise, we ain't the same, bruh.
It's the same. Well said.
All right.
Which disqualifies everything else. If you ain't living up to the qualifications of the body of politics concerning those people, then you're not the same.
You're not the same.
Well said.
And then this
It all goes back to status as well.
Yeah. Status. Standing, estate.
Mhm.
Well said, Queen.
And in point of interest, as you see, 1790 is the year, the kickoff for a lot of that stuff. Because before 1790, we was able to put ourselves into the time frame of the monarchs. After 1790, you were not even underneath the understanding of the monarchs because you were in bondage. They were pulling you from your common senses, which your allegiance was tying you back to those, which we can call your group. They took you out of your group and put you into the states or into the colonies for their likeness. And then next thing you know, now you start assimilating and you start losing your identity. Once you lose your identity, it's a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And this last case is called Takao Ozawa versus United States. It was argued October 3rd and 4th, 1922, and it was decided November 13th, 1922. All right. And it says Mr. George Wickersham, with whom Mr. David Whittingham was on the briefs for Takao Ozawa, Mr. Solicitor General Beck, with whom Mr. Alfred Wheat, Special Assistant to the Attorney General, blah, 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 and Mr. U.S. Webb, Attorney General to the State of California, and Mr. Frank English, by leave of court, filed a brief as amici curiae. Mr. Justice Sutherland delivered the opinion of the court. It says the appellant is a person of the Japanese race born in Japan. He applied on October 16, 1914 to the United States District Court for the Territory of Hawaii to be admitted as a citizen of the United States. His petition was opposed by the United States District Attorney for the District of Hawaii, including the period of his residence in Hawaii. Appellant had continuously resided in the United States for 20 years. He was a graduate at Berkeley, California High School and had been nearly 3 years a student at the University of California. He had educated his children in American schools, his family had attended American churches, and he had maintained the use of the English language in his home. That he was well qualified by character and education for citizenship is conceded. The District Court of Hawaii, however, held that having been born in Japan and being the Japanese race, he was not eligible for naturalization under subsection 2169 of the revised statutes and denied the petition. Thereupon, the appellant brought the cause to the Circuit Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, and that court has certified the following questions upon which it desired to be instructed. All right, so it says 1. Is the Act of June 29, 1906, providing for a uniform rule for the naturalization of aliens complete in itself, or it is limited by Section 2169, the revised statute of the United States? That's the question. 2, it says, is one who is of Japanese race and born in Japan eligible to citizenship under naturalization laws? 3, if said Act of June 29, 1906 is limited by said section of 2169, and naturalization is limited to aliens being free white persons and to aliens of African nativity and to persons of African descent, is one of the Japanese race born in Japan under any circumstances eligible to naturalization. These questions, for purposes of discussion, may be briefly restated. All right, so we don't got to re-say it because it said it once. So let's get on down to it. It says, it is the opinion of the committee that the frauds and crimes which have been committed in regard to naturalization have resulted more from the lack of any uniform system of procedure in such matters than from any radical defect of the fundamental principles of existing law, which are governing in such cases. It says, two changes which the committee has recommended in the principles controlling in naturalization matters and which are embodied in the bill submitted herewith are as follows. First, the requirement that before an alien can be naturalized, he must be able to write either in his own language or in the English language, and read, speak, and understand the English language. And second, that the alien must intend to reside permanently in the United States before he shall be entitled to naturalization. All right? So it says, it seems to make it quite clear that no change of the fundamental character were involved was in mind. One main point I want to make note is when it comes down to naturalization over here, that you have to have the understanding of what they say, the English history language, and you must be able to speak it. Because why? Because the United States is the successors of the crown. And as them being successors of the crown, they must maintain that anyone who's coming in via the naturalization understands the history. Because you can't keep up the so-called American history if you can't keep up the history where they got their start from, which is England or Great Britain.
Whedon versus Thou, I think it is.
All right, so let me get to the meat. Okay, so it says, this is the most important part right here. So the question then is, who are comprehended within the phrase free white persons? Undoubtedly, the word free was originally used in recognition of the fact that slavery then existed and that some white persons occupied that status. The word, however, was long since ceased to have any practical significance and may now be disregarded. We have been furnished with elaborate briefs in which the meaning of the words white person is discussed, with ability and at length, both from the standpoint of judicial decision and from that of the science of ethnology. It does not seem to us necessary, however, to follow counsel in their extensive researches in these fields. It is sufficient to note that the fact that these decisions are, in substance, to the effect that the words import a racial and not an individual test. And with this conclusion fortified as if by reason and authority, we entirely agree. Manifestly, the test afforded by the mere color of the skin of each individual is impracticable. You hear this? As this differs greatly among persons of the same race, even among Anglo-Saxons, ranging from imperceptible gradations from their fair blonde to the swarthy brunette. We already told you what swarthy was. It was brown. And the latter being darker than many of the lighter hued persons of the brown or yellow races. Hence, to adopt the color test alone would result in a confused overlapping of races and a gradual merging of one into the other without any practical line of separation. Beginning with the decision of Circuit Judge Sawyer in the Ayuk Sawi, the federal and state courts in an almost unbroken line have held that the words white person were meant to indicate only a person which is popularly known as the Caucasian race. Among these decisions, see, for example, blah, blah, blah. With the conclusion reached in these several decisions, we see no reason to differ. Moreover, that conclusion has become so well established by judicial and executive concurrence and legislative acquiescence that we should not at this late day feel at liberty to disturb it, in the absence of reasons far more cogent than any of that have been suggested. The determination that the words white person are synonymous with the words a person of Caucasian race simplifies the problem, although it does not entirely dispose of it. Controversies have arisen and will no doubt arise again in respect to that proper classification of individuals in borderline cases. The effect of the conclusion that the words white person mean a Caucasian is not to establish a sharp line of demarcation between those who are entitled and those who are not entitled to naturalization, but rather a zone of more or less debatable ground outside of which, upon the one hand, are those clearly eligible, and outside of which, upon the other hand, are those clearly ineligible for citizenship. Individual cases falling within this zone must be determined as they arise from time to time by what this circuit court has called in another connection, Davidson versus New Orleans, the gradual process of judicial inclusion and exclusion. All right. And most part, or the end part, like I said, the briefs filed on behalf of appellate refer in complimentary terms to the culture and the enlightenment of the Japanese people. And with this estimate, we have no reason to disagree, but these are matters which cannot enter into our consideration of the questions here issued. We have no function in the matter other than to ascertain the will of Congress and declare it. Of course, there is not implied, either in the legislation or in our interpretation of it, any suggestion of individual unworthiness or racial inferiority. These considerations are in no manner involved. Questions submitted are therefore answered as follows, blah, 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 so it will be certified. And based off of these two cases that just been presented, as well Thomas William Short, it shows you who the Anglo-Saxons are, and is letting you know that your position or your status is not determined as an individual, but as your group, based off of your genealogy that you yourself have to trace back, utilizing your surname, but in our case, our surname as well as the settlement certificate called a birth certificate.
Well said, well said, well said, Archbishop. Beautiful job. Everybody give Brother Archbishop a hand of applause for such a beautiful demonstration, as well as the clarity that he delivered his dissertation. I'm going to qualify that because everything was straight on. All right. Let's keep the flow going on. Any questions from the panel? Any questions?
I don't have one, King.
All right. I'm pretty sure everybody up to speed. All right. So Archbishop, once again, Noble, beautiful job.
Thank you.
I'm going to qualify everything that you said based off understanding the proximity of blood concerning the hereditaments, concerning the birthright, where it goes back to your name. As Archbishop said that there was a book written about the house of Belmont, relative to where he descended down from, because you have two things, collateral lineage and representation lineage. Representation, somebody who speaks on behalf of the whole family who bears that surname, or not, and not contrary to those who just descend from a person who has the same last name. And as a result of us not knowing this history of the proximity of blood, people have amalgamated in the blood who carry the same surname, which doesn't have the right to carry the surname. And this is what we come to correct. So well done, Archbishop Belmont in the House of Belmont.
Thank you, King Clifford Jefferson.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any questions from anybody?
Point of interest, that right there is technically the nail in the coffin regarding, once again, how you play your hand. Because if you don't know who you are, going back to time immemorial, you have no standing.
Mm-hmm. Have no standing in law. Hold on, I'm missing the court case. Where did it go?
So, Archbishop,
Yes, Noble Scott.
so this court case is showing us that improprio persona is exactly what it says it is.
Yes. And not only that, you have to present and prove you are who you say you are. Like I said, the evidence is on you. So if you say you are this individual and you come from this place, you have to have evidence to be able to corroborate with that. And based off of what that case was, those cases were saying, you can't just trace yourself as an individual. You have to go back to the group. So therefore, those rights or privileges or benefits that the group had, you get that based off of you being tied to the group. So like the king always say, we're not looking for like an individual remedy. We're looking for the group remedy because we didn't fall as individuals. We failed as a family.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, understood. So those Negro, Black, and colors are going to have a hard time with reparations, apparently.
Absolutely, because they don't want to be part of the full family because they don't want to honor and accept who they are. You know, they want to pick and choose bits and pieces that's in their blood. We have to understand and accept, yeah, we've been intermarried and so many different lines are in us. But the one that holds a superior claim is English, because we still have the names, we still have the history, we still have the characteristics, all of that. And so we just need to be that. But unfortunately, somewhere down the road, somebody convinced our people to, nah, you can be something else. You can be this, you can be that. And we got to allow them to choose whatever they want to be. It just, they can't come over here with that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. And we're going to qualify because it's in the proximity of the blood to the surname. There's another case called Dawson Leslie versus Godfrey, 1808. Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Queen, you want to read?
And point of interest, pay attention to the year of these cases because these years are not so far off from the Treaty of Paris that took place in 1783, 84.
Okay. Let me
Oh, it don't scroll.
you just read.
Oh, you scroll it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ready?
All right, so U.S. Supreme Court, Dawson's Leslie versus Godfrey.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
All right, now pay attention to the name. Dawson Leslie versus Godfrey. Godfrey is my surname. Jefferson, right? Dawson Leslie. Leslie is another name for a tenant.
Mm-hmm.
It's a legal term for tenant in chief. All right, now look what the case is about. Owning land here in North America. Read what the case says.
A person born in England before the year 1775 and who always resided there and never was in the United States is an alien and could not in the year 1793 take lands in Maryland by descent from a citizen of the United States.
Okay, stop right there. All right, so it says any person born in England before 1775 could not inherit the land according to 1793. Now, we just talked about 1790 Naturalization Act. So everybody who became a citizen by way of the Naturalization Act was able to inherit land based in 1793. Mm-hmm. And they talk about lands in Maryland. Now, Maryland, before it became which is now called the District of Columbia, because the District of Columbia came from Virginia and Maryland. And Maryland was named after Henrietta of France. Henrietta of France married Charles I. Parts of Charles the First named Maryland after Henrietta of France. I think that was his wife, but I'm not mistaken. All right. Now it says that no person born in England before 1775, we're not talking about the United States, we're talking about in what they presume to be England, can inherit the land after 1793 in Maryland. Continue to read.
Russell Lee, a citizen of the United States in the year 1793, died seized in a fee of a tract of land called Argyle, Cowal, and Lorne, situated in that part of the District of Columbia, which was ceded to the United States by the state of Maryland. Miss Dawson, the lesser of the plaintiff, would be entitled to the land by descent unless prevented by the application of the principle of alienage. She was born in England before the year 1775, always remained a British subject, and was never in the United States. The court below instructed the jury that she was an alien and could not take the land by descent from Russell Lee in the year 1793. The question having been fully argued but not decided in the case of Lambert's lessee versus Payne. Keep going down. Read this one.
Yes.
Oh, and McLevain versus Cox lessee. The council agreed to submit it to the court without further argument.
Okay, so here's another case of McLevain versus Cox Leslie. They must have been relative because they got that same last name. Dawson Leslie, Russell Lee, all the same. Trying to inherit the land based off their descent last name. Everybody see that? Mm-hmm. But they were born in England before 1775. they could not inherit the land in the United States because the United States held the land in trust. The United States was successor to the crown, and it was fixed in nationality. Whedon versus Chinbao. That's the court case. Whedon versus Chinbao, as well as United States versus Warren Kimmel R. All right. Now let's go to another case. McLevain versus Coates of Leslie. To qualify, because you can see the defendant last name is Godfrey. That's my last name. So the court must have ruled in favor of Godfrey because Dawson Lee and the descendants of Lee could not inherit the land because they were born or descended to descendants that were born in England prior to 1775. Prior to 1775, England was under the government under what they call the United Kingdom. And as we know in City of Paulette versus Daniel Clark, the United States and the British government dissolved the Church of England, which was the crown. Everybody remember that case, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's go to this case. McLevain versus Coates of Leslie. Read this one.
Go up. I want to do McLevain versus Coates. Let's see. Go down some. Error from the circuit court for the District of New Jersey.
Yes.
Is that the end or North Jersey? Okay.
New Jersey.
To revise a judgment given for the plaintiff below upon a special verdict in injectment. The material facts of the case are stated in the argument of W. Tillman for the plaintiff in error. The question which arises in this case is of great importance and have never been decided in this court, nor in the state of New Jersey. It is, in substance, whether a person born in the United States while they were British colonies and who took no part in favor of the Revolution, but joined the British Army in an early stage of the war, and from that time to this, by the whole tenor of actions and declarations, has shown his election not to be a citizen of the U.S., here to the British Empire, capable of taking land in New Jersey by descent in the year 1802. There is no occasion to dwell minutely on title. The lesser of the plaintiff had good title if Daniel Cox the younger was capable of taking by descent from his aunt Rebecca Cox, who died in 1802. That is to say, he has title to a certain undivided part according to the law of descent in New Jersey, concerning which there is no question. Family disputes are always unpleasant, yet as laws regulating descent are merely of municipal creation, no one has a right to complain if by change of the law, he now receives a less portion than formerly, or even if he receives no portion at all.
Did everybody hear what they just said?
Mm-hmm.
Read that part again.
I mean, beggars can't be choosy,
Beggars
right?
can't be choosy. You get what you get.
Yeah.
Read what it says again.
Family disputes are always unpleasant, yet as laws regulating descent are merely of municipal creation, no one has a right to complain if, by a change of the law, he now receives a less portion than formerly, or even if he receives no portion at all.
Okay, they're talking about law. According to the law, read the last paragraph.
By
One second. Right here.
that one.
Right.
By the law of New Jersey, before the revolution, Daniel Cox would have taken all the estate of his aunt Rebecca, not only to the entire exclusion of his cousins, the children.
I'm sorry. That was not what I apologize. Okay, so the key point is that in this, where is it at? The key point, family disputes are always unpleasant, yet as laws regulating descent are merely of municipal creation. No one has the right to complain if by a change of law, he now receives a less portion than formerly, or even if he received no portion at all. So the law of descent, being that it's governed by municipal laws are color law.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're governed by municipal by way of incorporation, then you have no birthright. Can everyone agree?
Follow.
Agree.
Because municipalities and counties incorporate inside the state. The state is not considered for diversity issue because the state at one time were colonies.
Colonies, yep.
The state don't want that to get out, that they were colonies. So they allow everybody to come in and incorporate and take the place of them. That way it's off, the spotlight is off them. But they have a clause that's saying that they're not legislatively constructed. They're just allowed to do what they do. And if they're ever challenged, i.e. the municipalities and counties, don't come rescue, don't come ask for our protection from the state, because we can't help.
Mm-hmm.
We can't even help ourselves. All right? Okay, let's go here. So we're seeing it's a birthright thing. How much time we working with, Archbishop?
Got 40 minutes.
Okay, I gotta move fast. All right. Patronymic. Patronymic or patronym is the, can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Patronymic or patronym is a component of personal name based on the given name of one's father, grandfather, or an earlier male ancestor. Patronymics are still in use, including mandatory use. In many countries worldwide, although their use has largely been replaced by or transformed into patronymic surnames. Examples of such transformation includes common English surnames such as Johnson, son of John. Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Now they have different for different nations. Africa, we're not African, we're not Ethiopian, we're not from Kenya, we're not from Mozambique, we're not from Nigeria, we're not from Somalia, we're not from South Africa, we're not from East Asia, we're not from China, we're not from Taiwanese, Mongolia, we're not from Southeast Asia, India. We're not from Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Brunei. We're not from West Asia, Armenia. We're not from Azerbaijan, however you pronounce that. We're not part of these Semitic cultures. That includes Arabic. We just went over Arabic dealing with the Arabians, trying to become a citizen. Nor do we associate with Aramaic or Hebrew, Assyrian, Persian, Turkish, Europe. We do associate with English. It said in England, names ending with the suffix of son or ing were often originally patronymic. And in addition, the archaic French, more specifically Norman, prefix fits cognate with the modern French Félix, meaning son. It appears in England aristocratic family lines dating from the Norman conquest and also among the Anglo-Irish. Thus, there are names such as Fitzgerald and Fitzhugh, of particular interest in the name Fitzroy, meaning son of the king, which was sometimes used by illegitimate royal children. Everybody follow?
Follow.
That takes me to my name, Jeffrey. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Now, we just went through the case. Dawson Lee, We just went over this case. Dawson Leslie versus Godfrey. We know Jefferson and Godfrey is the same name. So when we go to Jeffrey, because son is a prefix, our patronymic name, we just went it. In England or Europe, ing or son is a patronymic name, which means to send down from. So if you take it off the name Jeffrey, it says Jeffrey is a common English name, it means pertaining to. So you're actually looking at the first four letters, Engel, Engel, E-N-G-L, or it's spelled I-N-G-L. Okay, it just pertains to. Let's prove it real quick before I move on. England. Everybody seen that? England, history, family crest, and coats of arms. You see it spelled with an E. If you go here, you see it spelled with an I. So the E and an I is interchangeable. What is a vowel? A-E-I-O-U is sometimes Y.
Why?
All right. So I and E are interchangeable. I-N-G and S-O-N is patronymic names that denote to those ancestors who denote or descend from those who inhabit the land. So therefore you have England. All right. Let's go a little bit more. Let's look at the word England. You see it on the map. I didn't create Wikipedia. England. The name England comes from, I guess it's another word of actually saying it.
That whole thing looks like a totally different.
I think
Well,
that's
it's the
supposed to be
same
the
flag.
English of it.
Oh,
the
England.
whole-
Yeah, England.
Yeah.
Yeah, on English. Then you got England. My computer shut down. Give me 1 second. Did everybody see that?
Pull it up now. All right.
Everybody see that?
Yep.
So England or England, spelled the same way, E or I. England or England, same word. All right, and that why? Because it's patronymic. The word S-O-N and I-N-G are patronymic surnames. All right, we just read it for ourselves. Let's go ahead. Jefferson. Jefferson, Jeffrey is a common English given name and a variant form of the name Godfrey. It's so from Middle French variant of Godfrey or Godfrey. It has been argued that a common derivation of Middle French Godfrey or Geoffroy or Jeffrey from Godfrey is mistaken, and that the name reflects two separate first Germanic elements, God versus Gaunt, which became conflated in Old High German by the end of the early medieval period. Gaunt goes into the history dealing with Odin or Woden. God goes back to the story dealing with the English people or the English people, spelled with an E or an I. We're about to get into that in a second. Outside of North America, Godfrey is more common than Jeffrey. Jeffrey is a variant are found as surnames, usually as patronymic ending in I-N with the S, Jeffrey or Jeffrey. The surname Jefferson is also a patronymic version of the given name. In Scotland, Geoffrey is most frequently found to be the surname. So they say in Scotland, Geoffrey or Jefferson is most used. Outside of what is said, North America, Godfrey is used. We know the kings of the monarchs of the British monarchs were from Scotland. So this is where the name comes from, Jefferson. It should be pronounced as Godfrey because the origin of the name Geoffrey is Francia, medieval France, or Norman England. That makes sense to everybody.
Follow.
So we got to trace this name back. So let's first start with Francia. Francia. The core Frankish territories inside the former Western Roman Empire were close to Rhine and Meuse rivers in the north. After a period where a small kingdom interacted with the remaining Gallo-Romans, instituting to their south a single kingdom uniting them, were founded by Clovis I, who was crowned king of the Franks in 496. Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
His dynasty, the Merovingian dynasty, was eventually replaced by the Carolingian dynasty. The Carolingian dynasty was under the jurisdiction of what we call Charlemagne. But who was Clovis I? This is what we want to first, because his dynasty was called the Merovingian dynasty. Let's hit the Merovingian dynasty first. This is old news. We already been through this. The dynastic name, medieval Latin, Merovingi or Merovingi, sons of Merovec, derived from an unattested Frankish form, akin to the attested Old English, however you pronounce that, with the final ing being the typical Germanic patronymic suffix. Because it said in England, the two suffixes patronymic is son and ing. Didn't they just say that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. The name derived from King Merovec, whom many legends surround. Unlike the Anglo-Saxon royal genealogies, the Merovingians never claimed to descend from God, nor is there evidence that they were regarded as sacred. Now, they just said in the name Geoffrey, let's go back. It says Geoffrey, elements of God versus God. It says the element versus God. So that means these are contradicting to each other. So we deal with Francia, where the origin of my surname comes from, was going back to, they said, Clovis I, who was the founder of the Merovingian dynasty, who never claimed to be descendants of God, because it just said here, elements of God versus God. So if he didn't descend from God, then he descended from God. Does that make sense to everybody?
Follow.
Okay, let's just get it going. Find out who this is. Anglo-Saxon. Remember they talked about a seer and Archbishop Blessing? Archbishop spoke about a seer who wrote about the Merovingians. It says some versions of English scroll lines or Western names above that Woden purportedly giving Woden ancestry, but the names are now usually thought to be from another royal lineage, ironically added to the standard genealogy. What's that up above that? So it says Anglo-Saxon royal genealogy. Some versions of the English royal line of Western add names above that of Woden. When you go into Woden, you go into the movie stories of Odin, Thor, Beowulf, etc. Everybody follow? That's based off the God side of it. When you go back to Geoffrey is a name that is the note to Godfrey. It didn't say Godfrey, it said Godfrey or Godfrey. but it says that dramatic elements consist of God versus gone. So you have to go into those two storylines. One is concrete and one is abstract. The stories dealing with Thor, Woden are abstract stories. The stories dealing with God or Godfrey are concrete because they're going back to stories dealing with territories governed in France. And the first story is dealing with Clovis I. And Clovis I was the founder of the Merovingian dynasty. The Merovingian dynasty never claimed to be descendants of God, where the name Godfrey comes down from. Everybody follow?
Follow.
You got the word Jefferson, son, or ing, are patronymic, which means to come down from. What? Descendants from Geoffrey, i.e. Godfrey, because the word Geoffrey is what was used by the Scottish kings. It just said it. In Scotland, Geoffrey is most frequently found to be the surname. Outside of North America, in which the kings of England, they use the word Godfrey or Godfrey. So we just went through Francia, and Francia was started by who? Clovis I. Just look at the Frankish kings. These are a list of Frankish kings. List of Frankish kings. Everybody see that?
Follow.
Mm-hmm.
The Franks, Germanic-speaking people that invaded the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century were first led by individuals called dukes and regulars. The earliest group of Franks that rose to prominence was the Salian Merovingians. We know that's Clovis I. We see it right there. First king. Everybody see it? Clovis I. All right. So if it's Clovis I and he descended down from a bunch of kings, we want to find out. Let's go into here. Let's go right here. (800 BC). Let's go back in time, y'all. 800 BC. Berber County. It don't mean before Christ. It means Berber County. You can use before Christ. It don't hurt because Christ didn't live in these times. 800 BC, which means Berber County. If you look in the calendar, for all those who are viewing, there is no Julian calendar in operation. Everybody see that right here. No Julian calendar. The Gregorian year is 800 BC. This is the 23rd dynasty of what they call Egypt. But they weren't Egyptians, they were Berbers. Egypt is a Greek word. So in order for you to understand the Egyptians from the Greek, you got to go into the Greek history. That goes into the year 151. Because in the Berber year calendar, it's 151. Remember, in our year, they're using the Gregorian calendar. Because when you went back 800 BC in the Gregorian year, will be a different time. So in this year, according to Gregorian people who tell them the story, they say 800 BC is at the year of the 22nd dynasty, 23rd dynasty, which were the first Olympiad. Everybody know what Olympiad means, right? It means games. It says the first games started in the 23rd dynasty. Where's the 23rd dynasty? The 23rd dynasty is usually classified as the third dynasty of the ancient Egyptian of the third intermediate period. This dynasty consists of a number of West kings who ruled either as pharaohs or as independent kings of part of Upper Egypt. He who writes your books sets your timeline. So people who invaded these territories are now all calling the Egyptians, but not identifying with the people who are really there at that time because they were a part of the West dynasty. Who are the West? The West, abbreviated in ancient so-called Egyptian as Ma, was an ancient Libyan Berber tribe, along with other groups like Lebu and Tehunu. Early records of the West date back to the 18th dynasty from the reign of Amenhotep III during the 19th and the 20th dynasty. Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back. So this is 800 BC, where the first game started. Now, if you look in the Berber, it says 151. So let's look at that year, 151 BC. Because the Olympic Games started every 4 years. They started here in North America in Athens in 1869, if I'm not mistaken. 1860, somewhere around in the 18th century. The first game in North America and over here in the modern world started in Athens. And Athens is in Greek. So in the year 157, now it's the 33rd dynasty. Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
We're still
Yes.
using the Berber counter, but the year is 151. And now what year is in the Berber counter? It's 800 AD. Because if you got 800 BC, and in that year in the Berber is 151. So we have 151 BC. You can't go back up to 800 BC. So that means that if it's 800 in the Berber year, it must be 800 AD. Everybody agree?
Follow.
Any questions? Anybody got any questions about us being in the year 800 AD? Because AD is AD Annos Dominios, in the year of our Lord. That's what Annos means. All right? So if it's 800 AD, then 800 AD is at the time of Charlemagne. Let's go here. Everybody see Charlemagne?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Charlemagne, a member of the Carolingian dynasty, was king of the Franks from 1768 and kings of the Lombards, which is the house of Savoy, and the first emperor of Rome from 800. So from 800 BC to 151 BC, you have our ancestors, which was the Berbers, till you get to 151, which deals with the Greeks, Ptolemaic. And then 800 in the Berber year is 800 AD, and it breaks to this guy, Charlemagne, king of the Carolingian dynasty, who descended from the Merovingian dynasty, who was established by who? Clovis I. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Follow.
So Clovis I established the Merovingian dynasty, who never descended from God, like the Anglo-Saxons. The Carolingian dynasty descended from the Merovingian dynasty, and the Carolingian dynasty was started from who? Charlemagne.
Charlemagne.
In the year 800 AD. Because if you have 151 BC and the Gregorian calendar, and our year is the year 800 AD, and the AD means Annos Dominius, it's the year of our Lord. So this is the year 800 AD. And they descended from who? The list of the Frankish kings. Clovis I, let's go with the 800 AD. Merovingian. See all these kings right here? There you go. Charlemagne. Everybody see it?
Follow.
Mm-hmm.
Same guy. So all these descended down from the same family. The same proximity of blood. From Clovis I to Charlemagne. And all those were Frankish descendants. They were descendants of the Franks. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Follow.
Okay, let's go back here. Jefferson. Now we just associated my surname with the Frankish dynasty, going from Clovis I to Charlemagne. Everybody follow?
Follow.
All right. Let's look at the medieval origin of my name. It takes you right here. France in the Middle Ages. The Kingdom of France in the Middle Ages, roughly from the 10th century to the middle of the 5th century, was marked by the fragmentation of the Carolingian Empire and West Francia. The expansion of the royal control of the House of Capet, including their struggle with the virtually independent principalities, duchies, and counties, such as the Normans and Angevin region. That had developed following the Viking invasion and through the piecemeal dismantling of the Carolingian Empire and the creation of the extension of the administration states controlled under Philip II Augustus. All right. So who was the founder of the Carolingian dynasty? Charlemagne. Everybody follow, right?
Follow.
Follow.
Let's find out where this missing 1,000 years comes from. Everybody see this? Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
The mysteries of the 100 years missing from the Galleria Umberto.
1,000 years.
1,000 years.
That's the title here. Okay. Umberto.
Umberto. Now you know it's called Umberto. It sounds like Roberto, right? Umberto. You ever heard Spanish say Roberto?
They use that. The Spanish people.
Spanish people.
Not
All right.
Umberto.
All right. Everybody see this building?
Yes.
This is a French in Naples. This is in Naples. This is a French website of a photography from 18th century. From a private and public collection. On one of its pages, we find the following image of the shopping mall called Galleria Umberto in Naples, Italy. Now we know Italy, the capital of Italy is Rome. And one of the duchies of Italy with the capital of Rome is Naples. All right. Now everybody see the Roman numerals up here, right? Anno and DCCXC. That's 890.
Okay.
That's the year 890. You see streetcars, you see a train, you see people walking. Now here's a modern day photo. Now there's an M added on to it. Annos MDCCCXC. That makes it the year 1890.
How do you change that? Go back a minute.
I'm going to show it again. This is a picture back in that was discovered in 1890. The building is missing an M. It says 890. Let's just go ahead to the Roman numerals. DCCXC decimal means 890. MDCCCXC is 1890. So they added on 1,000 years to this structure. And if you go on Wikipedia, they said the structure was built in 1890. How can that be when you got a photo back here that's showing it is in 1890? And it's called Naples, the Galleria di Royal Humbert I. So who's ruling at this time? Because first you're talking about Naples, and Naples is the Duchess in Italy, which is capital city is Rome. So who is this? Because de royal means the king. That's what that means, de royal, the king. This is who we come to. Everybody see that? Humbert I, or Umberto I. In 950, King Edward the Peaceful, they went from 1 AD to 1 BC in 950. Now, if you add 800 BC and you had 800 and 151, how much would that add up to? Somebody add up 800 plus 151.
951.
951.
Yeah.
They went from 1 BC to 1 AD and 950, and then 1 AD is 951. Here you got Hubert the First Umberto is a king in 950, and he's a king of Italy from the House of Savoy. What is the House of Savoy? Let's look it up real quick before we go on. House of Savoy. It says, its junior branches, Serval Carignano, the House of Savoy led this Italian unification. In 1860, it ruled the Kingdom of Italy until 1946. They also briefly ruled the Kingdom of Spain. Moved the Kingdom of Spain. In the 19th century, the Savoyard kings of Italy were Victor Emmanuel II, Umberto I, Victoria Emmanuel III, and Umberto II. The last monarchs reigned for a few weeks before being disposed following the Institution referendum of 1946. So I think I got these kings here too as well. So there's Umberto I, Umberto II, and Umberto III, who are kings of the House of Savoy. Let's go back up here. So if you add 800 BC, which was the last dynasty of the kings of Libyan Berbers, and then we got 151 in the Berbier, that takes you to Ptolemaic, the Greek. And in that Berbier, contrary, that will be 800 AD, which takes you to the time of Solomon. Because most of the stories going back to these kings are fake history because they don't have a record or a calendar to support it, because they used the Gregorian calendar, which didn't come on the scene until 1582. All right, so let's go here. It says that we're dealing with Naples. Let's go back to Robert the Devil. Everybody remember that story, Robert the Devil?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Robert the Devil.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, wow. Robert the Devil. We know the Duchess went to God, and we know the difference between God and God. The gods were the descendants of the Frankish kings who were descended from Godfrey. All right? Gaunt were those who descended down from the devil. They were descendants of what they call the Robertines, because the Robert the Devil was associated with 3 individuals. 4 rather. Richard, Duke of Normandy.
Richard,
Duke of Normandy. Robert, Duke of Normandy. Robert, King of Sicily, which is Robert of Naples. And another guy, what's his name at? Robert Cecil of Salisbury. And he was an Englishman, English statesman noted for his direction under the government during the Union of the Crowns as tutor of England, gave way to the Stuarts' rule in 1603. So you got Robert Cecil, you got Robert of Naples, and Robert of Naples descended down from Charles of Naples. Let's hit this real quick. His name was Robert of Naples or Robert of Anjou. Everybody see that? Robert, King of Naples, or Robert of Anjou was king of the titular of the King of Jerusalem. He was the 3rd son of Charles II. Charles II was the founder of the Capitan Anjou house. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Count of Anjou. Let's see. Okay, let's do it here. All right, let's go here. So let's go to the Robertines. I gotta be quick with here. These are your Robertines. Robertines is a modern Scotsman, are the proposed Frankish family, which was ancestors to the Capetine dynasty. Everybody see that? Oh, come on. All right, everybody see that?
Okay.
Yep.
The Robertines are a Frankish family which were ancestors to the Capetine dynasty and thus to the royal family of France and of many other countries. The Capetine appears first in the records as a powerful noble serving under the Carolingian dynasty under Shalimar. And we know Shalimar descended from who? Clovis the First. Right? Now let's go look at this family line before I move on. These are all aligned. Robert the First. You go down to the 9th century. Come right here. Emma Paris. Everybody see here? These are all Robertines. Emma Paris and Robert Richard Duke of Normandy. Wasn't they associated with Robert the Devil?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hit Emma Paris. Emma Paris was a Duchess consort of Normandy, married to Richard Duke of Normandy. All right? This is also going to Emma of Normandy, who married Ethelred the Unready. How we know that? Let's go back to my name, Jefferson. How much time, Archbishop?
Technically like 5 minutes.
Oh, man. So not technically how much time?
I can try to pull you another 10 minutes.
All right, cool. Give me 1 second, y'all. One second. Get my screen refresh. Can everybody see this?
Not yet. Okay.
Okay, so we did French here, the origin of my name, as well as the medieval French. It took it to Clovis the First, as well as to Shalimar. And we know Shalimar ruled in 800 AD. And we know from 800 BC, which was the last dynasty of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, which goes back to Stamford the First, the Second. Then brought you down to 151 BC, which goes in Potomac. And then on the Berber chart, it shows the year to be 800 AD, which goes to the Shalimar. We're still using that Berber calendar, but the Berber calendar got distorted as a result of this. The name is in Norman England. Now, when it says Norman England, it takes you here. I didn't do that. They did that. From my name, it said Norman Conquest in 1022, King Ethelred the Unready, Ethelred England married Emma, the sister of Richard, Duke of Normandy. Their son Everett the Confessor, who spent many years in exile in Normandy, succeeded to the English throne in 1042. What's the problem with that? Ethelred married Emma. Emma was of Normandy, right? Her mother was Gunnar. Everybody see that? We're gonna hit Gunner. Gunner was from a spouse of Richard, Duke of Normandy, right? And that's associated with Robert the Devil, which is also associated with you, the Capitan. Let's go back here. This will be in closing. Counts Dukes of Anjou. All right. Counts of Anjou was the ruler of the Counts of Anjou, first granted by Charles the Bald in the 9th century. 9th century, the Robert Stone. Anglo and his son, Folk the Red, were Viscount until Folk assumed the title the Counts of Anjou. So it shows two distinct lines. Charles the Bald and the 9th century, Robert Stone, these are all Robertines versus Folk the Red. And he's descended from Anglo. How we know this, look at the houses. Counts of Anjou, Robertines. Now we just went to the Robertines, and the Robertines are descended down from the Carolingians. Capitan, Carolingians, Charlemagne, and it took you down here to Emma of Normandy, or Emma of Paris. We see that right there. Right there. So they're all descended from the devil. Let's go back here to where I was. So these are just the devil's seat, right here. Everything above this is the devil's seat. We just proved that. Now you got the House of Anglo. This is where folks descended down from. You got Anglo, Folk the first, Folk the second, Godfrey Greymantle, Folk the third, Godfrey. Then you got the House of Anjou. You keep going down. When Henry III, right here, Kirkmantle of the Godfrey married Empress Matilda. Hold on, the Empress Henry Kirkmantle. Henry II. Henry II, son Richard, you go down here. He had a son called Godfrey, Duke of Brittany. From Henry II and Eleanor Aquitaine, they had a son called Godfrey II, Duke of Brittany. He had a son called Arthur, Duke of Brittany. That broke the agnatic succession. Why? Because the Dukes of Brittany goes back here, the Judas of Flanders, House of Flanders. House of Flanders descended down from Charles the Bald. Charles the Bald are descended down from the Robertines. So now we know who descended down from, who was the ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, Eustace II. Eustace II, which is this guy, was from the House of Flanders. He married Gold of England, which is the daughter of Ethelred the Unready, the son of King Edward the Peaceful. All right. His son, he descended from that. You got Godfrey of Bouillon. Godfrey of Bouillon was the son of Eustace II. And I come to my closing in 1 second. Godfrey of Bouillon. So why is this important? Godfrey of Bouillon and Eustace II were all from the House of Flanders. Can we agree?
Agree.
It says it right here. They're all from the House of Flanders. The House of Flanders descended down from this person, Judas of Flanders. Everybody see this? Judas of Flanders. Mm-hmm. Judas of Flanders' spouse was Ethelwulf. Ethelbald and Baldwin the First. This one was married to Ethelwulf. Ethelwulf was King Alfred the Great's father. Everybody see that? Ethelwulf. His wife was Judith of Flanders and Alfred the Great. You go Alfred the Great. Who was his father? Everybody see that? Ethelwulf. We click now. Ethelwulf was married to Judith of Flanders from the House of Flanders, who descended from the Robertines. Who was Ethelwulf's father?
Egbert.
Egbert. I'm sorry, no. Who else was she married to? Let's go back here. Who was Judith of Flanders married to again? She's married to she was married to Judith of Flanders from the House of Flanders was married to Ethelwulf, Alfred the Great's father, as well as Ethelbald. Everybody see that? Who is Ethelbald? Was king of Wessex from 855 to 858 to 860. He was the second of the 5 sons of King Ethelwulf. Ethel's elder brother Ethelton. So that shows you that the House of Flanders, who were related to Charles the Bald, were all descendants from the Robertines, which were part of what we call Robert the Devil. And we know that if it wasn't for, let's go right here and I'll close out. Eustace II. Come on, man. Eustace II. If Eustace II's son, Godfrey of, I'm sorry. If Eustace II didn't marry Golda of England was the daughter of Ethelred the Unready. Everybody see that, right? Golda of England, or God Gift will mean God Gift, or Godiva was a Latin version, was the daughter of Ethelred the Unready and his second wife, Emma of Normandy. Now go back to my surname, Jefferson. And I'll close out on this. Okay, we go back to my name. Everybody see that? Jeffrey? I didn't do this webpage. I didn't do this. I didn't create this webpage. So if somebody created that, means they must be listening to our lectures because they're updating it as we teach. And right then, the origin of my name, Jeffrey, is in Francia, which deals with Clovis I and Charlemagne, because we know 800 AD is the time of Charlemagne. Medieval French goes into the time of Charlemagne. When you go into Norman England, I'm going to click it. Everybody see it. It takes you right here. In 1022, King Ethelred, and we know who Ethelred is, the son of who? Our Jesus Christ. King of England, King of the people. So we can prove from our ancestors' missing gap is from 800 BC, which starts with the ancient Anglo, what they call the Berbers of what we call where was it at again? Libya. I'm not even gonna go through that. They've seen it already. So 800 BC is the time of the 23rd dynasty or the 22nd dynasty of what we call Samsus I. Samsus I was born in 943 BC. And in that year, 800 BC, the correlating year in the Berber calendar is 151 BC. And in that year, you have the Greeks' interpretation, which is the 157th Olympiad. The first Olympiad started in 800 BC with us. That was the game that was being created for us to get ourselves back to who we descended down from. Because it added on from 800 BC to 151 is 950. And then 151 BC to 800 AD is 951. So 951 is the year they went from 1 BC to 1 AD. 950 to 1 AD. And 951, King Edgar the People was ruling. So I'm descendant of King Edgar the Peaceful, and it's linked to Godfrey the Fifth Kind of Grand Duke because his descendants went on to rule Jerusalem. And we know Jerusalem was protected by the first king, Godfrey of Bouillon, who descended down from Eustace II, who married Gold of England, who was the daughter of Ethelred the Unready, who was the son of King Edward the Peaceful. That's a map for you. So with that, I digress. I hope I didn't confuse you, but it just correlates with this case right here. Dawson Leslie versus Godfrey. Godfrey is my surname. A person born in England before year 17, when they declared their independence when in 1774. So they say a person born in England before 1775 who always resided there and that never was in the United States is an alien and could not in the year 1793 take land and marry them from the citizens of the United States. Because they let you know those citizens of the United States were those heirs, reclassified and reinstituted into the system. Those ones prior to 1775 who were claimed to be English descent were not, because they were subject to the British monarch system who descended down from Henry VIII with the reformation of the English church. And with that, I digress. Whew, that's long-winded. All right. So once again, I hope it wasn't confusion. I give Queen Gregorian to say a couple of words, and I'll leave it over to the hands of Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont.
Another beautiful lesson from King and also from Archbishop. Beautiful lesson, Archbishop. Just to say to all our viewers, you can't let somebody, tell you where you come from. You have to do the research for yourself. It's so very, very important to know where you came from. Like I said, going back to the children, the way they're being taught in our schools is just so wrong, the history that they're telling us. So very important to, go back and do the research for yourself. And with that, I digress.
Well said, Queen. Like I said, somebody got to speak on behalf of these names that we have. And I'm speaking on behalf of the name Jeffrey. And we know Jeffrey is the Scottish term for the English term Godfrey. And if we know the word free means Lord and the word God. So that means Lord God. And the moment speak on behalf of those Lord gods in a concrete way, who are ancestors, and I have to take upon that mantle and the accomplishment of the kingdom in which they were holding and which we're doing today. So with that, I digress, and I leave the floor to Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont, and each and every one of you from your perspective house. I digress.
Well, there you have it, brothers and sisters, from the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion, which has been renamed Great Britain. We have brought, which we said, conclusive evidence regarding who the king is, who we are, not only from a historical antiquarian standpoint, but also from a legal, lawful standpoint from Supreme Court. We've been here now for almost 3 years, standing on our status and our square regarding who we are. And as you see, those who take this work serious have done the proper preparation to bring themselves come home into the true church instead of continue to try to find remedies outside of what their salvation dwells. Once again, we didn't come for everyone. As we see, many of our brothers and sisters are still underneath the classification Negro, Black, Colored, based off of their mental capacity, which have now been labeled as non-compos mentis. And in our case, we're going to just call them deaf, because deaf does not mean just born without the ability to hear, but deaf etymologically means you choose not to listen. So since our brothers and sisters choose not to listen, and we're showing you everything that's actually being used against you that you choose not to use to actually support yourself in your claim, going back to time immemorial, for you to be able to have some type of standing to exist on moving forward in this paradigm that we call life. If you choose not to be yourself, then you will be erased off of the script, out the script, because there's no part for you. Once again, many of you choosing labels of stock characters, and stock characters can be replaced whenever the scene needs fit for you to be replaced. And if you pay attention to what's going on today in the so-called America, they're replacing the stock characters who were playing those roles as aliens, in this case, Negro, Black, and Colored, because you no longer are seeing fit to move forward for society or civilization as a whole. So they're replacing you by bringing in new foreigners and 2, which we call England, but you know it as America, so that way they can take your position. And that's the reason why we're here now at this day and time, because it was already spoken and prophesied that, you know, we were going to have to come and reclaim or reinvigorate the history and the legacy of the English, so therefore we can be saved this time and day and age. So with that being said, we love you. You know, listen to the message the way that it was brought to us. We had to give it to you the easiest way that we know how. Like we said, don't take our words lightly and don't get mad at the messengers based off of who we are, because the message is concrete and it takes a lot of energy for us to be able to compile it in a way for you to be able to listen, to understand it, and articulate it for you to be able to see yourself as part of this work, this time and day and age. So once again, we love you, and I digress, and I leave the rest of the closing to the rest of the brothers and sisters here on the panel. Peace and love.
Well said, Archbishop. Sister Middleton, Countess Middleton.
Yes, King. Again, a very good lesson. I would reach out to people that are starting to look at this information and recognize that the history that we've been taught is very recent and has been deliberately manipulated. You know, we've been taught to look at European history in a certain way. And when you really do it upon a deeper examination, you start to see that a lot of what we call old Europe is actually new Europe in terms of how they organized themselves in terms of timelines. And I'm so glad that you brought that close to us to kind of be able to re-examine and not get thrown off by these time periods. Things are a lot closer, and a lot of changes were deliberately done really in the last 250 years. People that lived during that time had a whole nother construct about the world. And so much has changed in these last, we'll say 200 years, that it just sounds like it's fantastic as opposed to the truth. And especially when it comes to our origin as Anglo-Saxon Berbers. That's been made very clear, and I thank you for that, and I digress.
Well said. And I just want to show some qualifications and concrete verification of the body of politics that we assume to be a part of is recognizing our status. Let me just share my screen real quick. If I can do it. Everybody see that? Can everybody see that?
I see it. Mm-hmm.
It says, Superior Court, New Jersey. Everybody see that?
Yes, follow.
All right. Superior Court of New Jersey, E-Court, Civil Law. Following notice has been sent from E-Court. Plaintiff named King Clifford Jefferson, defendant State of New Jersey, case captain Jefferson King versus State of New Jersey. Docket text. The motion filed on 10/5/22 was rescheduled. It was 11/05/2022, but they sent another text right after from the court that said that it would be scheduled to Friday, 10/21/2022. It said, do not come into the courthouse because no oral argument has been regarded. The court decision will be provided for you on a motion to enter judgment against the governor and the state of New Jersey. Now, do you know 10/21/2022 was the day of the Crusades? 10/21 was the day Godfrey Bullion started the Crusades. And the court docket, let me just pull you the other one so you can see that the court changed the docket. Can everybody see that? Hold on. Oh, here we go. Everybody see that?
It's pulling up.
It ain't showing in 1 second. Records. One second. Well, anyhow, I'm not going to show y'all. The date that it was scheduled for, the actual text was supposed to be, I got it on. At 9:55, it says the motion filed for 10/5/22 will be decided on November 4th, 2022. Then right after that, 2 minutes later, they sent me the one I just read to you that they're going to decide it on October 21st, 2022, which was the day of the Crusades. So I find that mighty strange that the court changed it, because if they did it on November, it would allow the defendants, i.e. the governor, chance to respond to the entry for the judgment. I didn't even say judgment. I said entry of default, and the court put judgment. So, and judgment means a final judgment. I hope that's what it means, because that's what's on the docket. So it just shows you that the position that the body of politics ran by the governor is in turmoil right now, because we're challenging it. And this is what everybody in politics, that each and every one of you who should be feeling this, claim to be a part of, should be doing in regards to your protected rights. You should be challenging that body of politics that has you subject in violation of the body of politics that protect your rights, that would not have you subject to the body of politics that you're subject to. So that's your argument that you should be bringing. With that, I digress. Sister Harris, if you're able to speak, from the House of Harris. Good morning. Countess Harris? Okay, she's probably busy. Okay, let's go to Countess Walker. Are you able to talk, speak? Countess Walker?
Greetings, King. I'm working, but it's a little noisy. I hope you can hear me pretty good.
Yes, we hear you fine. Good morning.
Greetings. You know, I'm always blown away with the information, and the information is always building on top of each other, and it's always consistent, and it's always gives us fuel to keep us going. So it was a great lesson confirming who the Anglo-Saxon Berbers are. And actually, you know, everywhere I drive, you know, I notice, you know, streets such as Sussex, Wessex. In fact, my son even went to Sussex Community College in Boston, and that's where he got his associates. And, you know, it's just always building on top of each other that the Anglo-Saxon Berbers are right here in England.
Yes.
So I'm grateful for the lessons. Thank you.
You're welcome, Countess Walker.
Countess.
Once again, our reality is what we make. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to be a part of reality that don't include us. So we have to make our own reality. And what's beautiful about our reality that it has always existed, just dormant. And the reality is protected by laws. There's laws that go in reality. One law that's broken in the just like what they call a mirage or a hologram. One glitch in a hologram, the whole script goes down. You know, so these holograms that are illusions, we're now dispelling them, and now they have to fall because the true reality, that's not a script, has now come to full fold. So well said. Let's see. Sister Harris, are you available now? Countess Harris? Lady Harris? Okay, let's go on with our brother C.A. Murphy from the House of Murphy. Greetings, Noble.
Greetings.
Good to have you, brother.
Thank you, King. Thank you for the lesson. It was a marvelous lesson. Got a lot of notes.
Thank you. You under the weather?
No. Weather is fine.
Yeah,
Here.
I thought you was in Alaska somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was feeling like you was in Alaska.
Seasons are definitely changing. The autumn weather is definitely here. The lesson revealed a lot of intel information. A lot of us English-speaking people here in the Americas have been fed so many falsehoods that most people don't know which way is up. So even for the truth seeker, this could seem a bit auspicious, but to the diligent, your reward is with the King. So I'm sure all those who are viewing this, all those at the sound of my voice, you are entrusted with sharing this information, challenging your leaders, legislation, municipalities, friends and family members to disclose this truth to yourselves and others. Your intel and your inheritance are backed by legislative law and statute. And it is a fact that the belligerent trustees that are in control now are outside of the law. And, it's also in their statutes, changing the state colonies to states and such. So, just another marvelous lesson. I've got a lot of notes, doing a lot of independent study. My surname Murphy was anglicized, going back to time immemorial in union with the House of Plantagenet. And, we remain in tail and, being a part of this great work. I speak before the Murphy family as a whole, that we thank you, King, and we appreciate, you incarnating into yourself to help us all come back to it. And we are here by your side. Our allegiance is unwavering. So with that, I yield.
Thank you, Brother Murphy from the House of Murphy. Once again, it's a trying time.